Hey everybody, Jamie here, your favorite CPA, financial literacy coach, and profit strategist. It is Wednesday, the 19th of May, and this is my typical time where I'm doing some teaching. So every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Time, you will find me here. I am live on Facebook right now in my Financial Literacy for Women Business Owners Facebook group. If you're not a member, come join us. We're having lots of great discussions over there. Also, you will find me live on my Jamie Trull business Facebook page and live on my YouTube channel. So if you're watching me on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel so that you don't miss anything. So this is where I just come and I think about questions that I continue to see, and I will do some teaching on those topics for you. So I've been seeing a lot of questions, and this is not new. This is a question that I've seen for a long time, but I do think everything that's going on in the stimulus world, right, has highlighted some things with regard to people's service providers. And so there's been more and more questions coming up around what exactly should I expect my accountant or other, financial service provider to do for me? So if you're here, say hi. I just want to make sure that everything is working and that you guys can hear me and that you can see me. And then we're going to jump right on into this topic. I see some people jumping on, but I can't see the comments yet. So hope everybody's having a good day, by the way. It is the last week of school for my son. I don't know about anybody else, but it is the very last week, and it's the last week of our online school experiment that we have done for this last year, which I will say we won't be doing again anytime soon. It worked. It did what we needed it to do, but I am, I'll say I'm a little bit glad that we are not doing this anymore. Hey, Stacy. Hey, Gloria. Hi, guys. Hi, guys. Awesome. Okay. Glad you guys can hear me and see me. Okay. So let's jump on in to the topic that we're going to be talking about today. What exactly can you expect from a service provider? And what I'm talking about here, and we're going to talk about what people call themselves, okay? Because it varies a little bit and it can mean different things. So that's something I want you to take away from this, is that not everybody is the same. There is no standardization here, but sometimes titles and what they call themselves can give you a little bit of a clue to what they focus on. So we're going to talk about accountants. What does an accountant do? What does a CPA do? What does an EA, if you've heard about that, that's an enrolled agent, do? What does a bookkeeper do, right? What does a tax planner do? What does a virtual CFO do? We're not going to go into all the ins and outs, don't worry, but I at least want to give you some high-level things to think about when it comes to your support team and who you need on that support team, okay? Because you guys know, if you've been around here for a while, you know, as a business owner, that I fully believe you need to have a support team around you for these financial types of things. And what I'll say is that most of you did not get into business to do bookkeeping. Most of you did not go into business to file your own taxes, which I very, very, very much advise against if you are a business owner, or even if have what you consider to be a side hustle, whatever it is. At that point, that's usually a really good point to get somebody qualified to be doing your taxes. So let's talk about the word accountant for a second, because technically I'm an accountant, okay? I am a CPA by designation, a certified public accountant. Now, depending on the state that you're in some states, you actually can't call yourself an accountant unless you're a CPA, okay? So that means that you have gone through a test. I've taken the CPA exam. It is not a fun test. It's kind of like taking the bar for a lawyer, right? It says now you are, officially a CPA and can work in this world. And a CPA can focus on various different things, though. So I'm a CPA, but you guys, I don't prep taxes. I don't want anything to do with it. I've never worked in a job that prepared tax returns. The only tax return I have ever prepared is my own. And I'm about ready to start outsourcing that as well, because it's not my favorite thing to do. So I think that that's one of the things. Now, of course, I have taken a test. I know things about taxes. I know where to find the information about taxes. I have understanding in there. But if you start asking me really detailed questions about the tax code and 1031 exchanges and all kinds of things, I'm going to send you to somebody who does that, okay? So again, not all accountants do the same things. In my former life, when I was an accountant I worked for Coca-Cola bottling company, at Coca-Cola Enterprises, the bottling company, for 10 years. And that's the bulk of my experience. But I worked in financial reporting. So what does that mean? That means that as an accountant, I didn't do anything with taxes, really. What I was doing for the company was analyzing financial statements, looking at technical accounting pronouncements. Sounds really fun, right, guys? Under US GAAP, I was understanding all the technical things about how to record certain types of transactions and how to make sure that your financial statements are correct, and not financial statements for taxes. Financial statements for the business, right? Financial statements for management to make decisions, and also financial statements that we had to issue publicly that talked about what happened with our business. So that's the type of accountant. I like that piece of accounting more, right? The analysis, the strategic analysis of what's going on in the company. That is something an accountant can do as well. But how do you know? How do you know what your accountant does? Well, you need to ask, right? You need to figure out, what are the things that I want from an accountant, right? What are the things that I need from a financial service provider? And then who does those jobs? So Gloria says that sounds like, exactly. I was very into the reporting side, and I love that. And Gloria also, by the way, you guys, is one of my preferred vendors. She does consulting on those types of strategic things in your business, okay? That's different than somebody that's gonna come in and consult necessarily on how to reduce your taxes or do tax planning, all right? Now, they could have the same designation, maybe the same letters behind their name, but that doesn't mean they do the same things. So I think sometimes when you're entering into relationships with new service providers, the best thing that you can do is ask questions. I think sometimes we don't ask them because we think we should know the answer, right? We think we should know what a CPA does, so we don't necessarily ask. But the thing is, they're all different. A CPA, an accountant, an EA, a virtual CFO, a bookkeeper, they're all going to have different things that they do. So the best thing that you can do is ask, what do you do? What do you specialize in? What does a package, how do you price things? And what does a package look like? What do I get from working with you? And I think the big divide that I have seen in this last year is that when we think of, there's the compliance aspect and the advisory aspect. Those are the two different types of things that you can get out of any of those people, right? There's compliance and there's advisory. What's compliance? Compliance is checking the box, doing the thing. I need to file a tax return. I need to keep my books up to date so that I can file my tax return, right? That's the compliance side of things. And oftentimes when you're working with that may be the impetus behind you deciding you need a service provider. You're like, I need a tax person because I don't want to file my own taxes. And so you go find someone, hire someone to take care of that. You don't want to do the bookkeeping in your business because it's a grind. Let's be clear about it. Bookkeeping is not fun. There is a very small subset of people that love bookkeeping, and those people are bookkeepers. Okay. Also not my favorite thing to do, right? So you have the compliance aspect of things, which is kind of the things you have to do to stay legally compliant, to not get in trouble, to not pay penalties, to make sure you're paying your sales tax on time, to make sure, right? That's the compliance aspect. And so what happened, I think, is that a lot of people hired someone thinking, I need this compliance piece done, and then thought that also would cover them on the advisory side. What's the advisory side? The advisory side is more strategic in nature. It's a specific type of person that's going to advise you on those things. So in some cases, who you hire to do your tax return might also be able to do some tax planning with you, right? Give you some ideas for how you could restructure your business to save on taxes, different things that you could do. They may be the same person, but oftentimes there's a different package in what you pay that person, right? So I think we assume like, if I pay somebody to do my taxes, they're going to tell me all the different opportunities and look into all the different opportunities for me to save on taxes. By and large, unless they tell you that's part of the package you're buying, if you are engaging with them once a year to do your tax return, that's probably not part of it. It's probably not. They're probably taking all of your things, plugging it all in. Yeah, they're going to look at like what tax credits are available and things like that, but they're not looking forward and being proactive to say, hey, here are things you could do for next year to make this go down. Because usually by the time that tax preparer has that stuff, there's not that much that they can do, right? There's not that much that you can do after the fact. There's a lot you can do proactively. But if you're just engaging in paying somebody $200 to do your tax return every year, I can guarantee you it doesn't include any meaningful amount of tax planning for you, okay? So that's something to think about too. And then similarly, when we're talking about, on the other side of bookkeeping, right? Your bookkeeper, if they're a bookkeeper, they're probably just giving you, here's your P&L. We're doing your categorization of expenses. We're reconciling, we're doing your account reconciliations. Maybe they're doing some things with accounts receivable and accounts payable if that's something that you deal with, right? But they're probably not doing a lot on the advisory side. They're probably not saying, hey, you had some issues this year. We might want to look into your pricing on some of your products or services. Or, hey, these costs went up this quarter. We might want to look at how we can reduce those. Or, hey, your salary percentage is actually coming in at about 60%. Payroll is costing you 60% of your profit or of your revenue. You probably want to look at how you can save there, right? Those are advisory type things. Or, hey, you maybe need to look into hiring a new person because you guys have hit your bandwidth and you have extra cash that you can do that with. And that might be a good investment in your business. Those are advisory type discussions. Typically, your bookkeeper who's doing your books is not doing that. Again, unless you've specifically engaged them. And oftentimes that additional advisory will be called something like consulting or virtual CFO, right? It's the more strategic side of things that they can help you with. But it's usually going to be a separate engagement, right? So that's, the main thing here is figuring out what do you want and need. And don't make any assumptions. The biggest thing that I see is that people make assumptions on what they're engaging someone to do, but they don't necessarily know. And then when they have that situation later, like let's look at the stimulus thing. A lot of people thought, well, I have a CPA, I have an accountant. Aren't they supposed to help me with this stuff? And their accountants are like, hey, you come to me once a year in April, or once a year in March. And, I don't know how to help you. I don't have the bandwidth to help you year round with getting these stimulus loans and things like that, right? So that's usually going to be a separate package. Once your company is moderately sized, I usually recommend having a year-round agreement with an accountant, not just a tax season, do my taxes type of agreement. A year-round agreement that includes some tax planning, some, consultative things, right? You want to understand what level of communication do I get in this package? Sometimes the accountants have different packages. Everybody structures their package. There's no standard, right? So that's important to know. Everybody structures them differently. So sometimes you're going to have a package that's just your tax return. And then you've got a package that's your tax return plus quarterly tax planning, or your tax return plus tax planning plus, monthly, an allotment of monthly consultative hours, right? That you can tap into. Some of them are just carte blanche to say, if you pay for this, then you get full support in whatever you need. But that's few and far between. So I find people getting surprised when they get, either their accountants can't, don't have time to answer their questions, aren't getting back to them. That's kind of the ghosting the accountants, which is an issue in the accounting world. Let me tell you, it's the ghosting of things you don't have time with, because accountants are not always the most confrontational people. And so you might, if you're emailing your accountant to try to help you and they're like, that's not really something that I do, or that's not something that your package includes, rather than coming back and telling you that, sometimes they will just, accountants also, we wear the badge of busy, very well, right? Like we are always busy. We're always got a million things going on. And so, that can sometimes be licensed to just not get back to people, which is a problem in the industry. But you want to find somebody and understand, what are your protocols for communication? What is the best way to get in touch with you? What level of communication and back and forth does the package that I'm paying for allow, right? And what else can you offer if that doesn't feel like enough? So that's really, And so this is this is something too that we've seen a lot, Mark, is that people are going to their accountant saying, hey, I need help with this thing. And it's an advisory thing. And like ERTC is a big example of an advisory thing, right? But a lot of accountants have kind of stayed away from it. They've kind of put up a like, oh, I don't know about that. That it's a big thing, but it is also huge. Huge. So I feel like in the beginning, some accountants were kind of taking this like, oh, maybe this stuff will blow over, even with PPP and all of that. Most people kind of came around and said, okay, I guess I'm going to have to learn this to help my clients. But ERTC is still one that is hard. It is really hard to find accountants that understand it and that really are digging in. And why is that? Well, it's the culture of busy. Right? These are also people who have been, let's give a little bit of grace here from the standpoint of a lot of accountants have basically been in tax season for a year and a half now in the middle of a pandemic, while some of them are, homeschooling kids and things like that. So I do want to make sure that we are always leading with empathy. But to my accountants who watch me, we also need to lead with customer service, right? We need to make sure that we're staying on top of, even if it's an automated email saying, hey, we're at a 7-day backup, we'll get back to you, right? Something, because the biggest complaint I see about accountants right now is the lack of responses, and people need help and they don't feel like they have anybody to go to. And so I think that we need to kind of figure out what is the new way in serving clients. But I think that rather than thinking about, because the thing is, when we're making a decision on who you're going to work with, when you're making a decision on, an accountant or a CPA or a bookkeeper, what's the first thing that is probably first and foremost in your mind? Cost, right? Cost. I want you to switch that, and I want you to think about value. Cost is an expense out the door, right? It's money you pay, it's never coming back. When you think about value, you recognize the fact that there is a return on that investment in some way. That return is going to come back to you in saved time or saved money, or oftentimes both, right? And also even security, knowing that things are having more confidence that things are being done correctly. Now, you want to have that sense of feeling from your accountant. If you don't switch accountants, if you don't feel secure, if you second guess them, if you feel like they're making mistakes, if you don't feel like they know what they're doing, then it is time to switch and use your gut about that. You can usually trust your gut about that. But I would say, I would definitely say that you want to make sure that you are really clear on what you're engaging them to do and that you're thinking about the value that they provide. Because shopping around for the cheapest, and this is kind of the joke among accountants, and I'll you guys will get it, but people will say like, yeah, but like hiring a good CPA is expensive. Y'all know what I'm going to say, right? Not nearly as expensive as hiring a bad one. If you think hiring a good CPA, bookkeeper, virtual CFO, whatever is expensive, try hiring a bad one. It's very expensive. In the long run, it's more expensive. You will miss out on things. You will, potentially even have fines and fees and, all kinds of things. It's just better to find somebody quality and think of the money that you're spending as an investment. Now, how do you do that? That's the other question. And that is a difficult thing to do. It's hard to vet people to know that they know what they're doing. Referrals are the best place to go. Don't just Google accountants in your area. Referrals, either other business area. If you want somebody in your specific area, which I don't think that you need, but if you do, some people like that. They like the security of being able to show up and see somebody face to face. Ask other business owners in your similar type of business in your town who they use and what their experience has been. That is the absolute best way to find somebody. Or if you're open to, more to people who work virtually, because heck, the post-COVID world, I think, is going to be highly virtual anyway, then I would, check around with other entrepreneurs, in different places. But also you can check out my preferred vendors list, which I think somebody, let's see, hang on. I can't tell who this is, but yeah, I have a preferred vendor list for exactly this reason, where I've actually vetted through people to find people that I trust, that I can recommend to you guys, because I don't do one-to-one services. I don't prep taxes. I don't do bookkeeping. And I used to do virtual CFO services, strategic things. I don't do that anymore. Instead, I teach courses on that stuff to help you become your own CFO. So if that is not in the price point to hire a virtual CFO, for a lot of people, it's not for a while, then you can start and learn how to do that. And I also think even if you have somebody who's helping you, who's consulting you, who is a virtual CFO, you still need to be empowered, because you still need to make the decisions in your business. Nobody cares as much about your business as you do, and nobody knows as much about your business as you do. So you can't completely outsource strategic decision-making. That has to all come through you, but you can have somebody advise you in that capacity if that's something that you need. Like I said, that could be even things like, I want to hire somebody. How much can I pay them? Or can I hire somebody? Right? Or what types of things should I invest in? How should I price things? I mean, there's so many different things that are in that strategic side of things. Your typical bookkeeper is not doing a lot of that. Okay. They're not going to be doing a lot of that. And we don't want to expect that they are going to be doing that. Let's see. Yeah, and there are people that specialize in things too. So some of these things that are coming out now, it's good to look for people who specialize in it, because even my preferred vendors, a lot of them don't specialize in ERTC. They might be knowledgeable about it, can help out to some degree, but it is helpful to find somebody who actually specializes in optimizing your ERTC credit. I do have somebody, Christy Stone. For those that are interested, we can drop the link below for a consult with her on the employee retention tax credit. For those of you who are my employers, if you haven't looked into it, it's a big, big deal. Oh, good. Awesome. We love Sheena. Sheena's amazing. So Sheena is one of our preferred vendors as well. She's a tax preparer, but she does have packages where she works year round with people, because that is the most effective way to work with a tax person, you guys. Let's see. Yeah, exactly, Gloria. So a friend just had to deal with a nightmare situation with a super cheap CPA. Yeah, definitely evaluate. It's not just a price shopping. They're not all the same. And people in this group can tell you they're 100% not all the same. Let's see. Yeah. And yes, you can definitely, there are definitely times when it is not comfortable to leave a situation that's not good, right? And sometimes, like, I've even heard horrifying stories of bookkeepers holding back on people's bookkeeping and saying they can't have access to their own financial files because they're switching. Don't let anybody do that to you. That is a lie. They are your files. They cannot legally hold your files. Now, you may have to, like, you may have money that you owe them, but still they can't hold your files and not let you have them. It's illegal. So make sure it's not fun sometimes. And most accountants, I will say, will just say, okay, they recognize when there isn't a fit there, but I have heard some difficult things about leaving. And sometimes it does confirm kind of the reason that you did. Yes, this is very true. Says our friend Bree Beers. Yes, also a preferred vendor. I love this, Joyce. I love this. We did the preferred vendors list, kind of came out of a necessity because so many people were looking for this. And one thing that made me uncomfortable in my group is that there were lots of different people promoting themselves, and I didn't know who any of them were. And so, and I had, somebody have a bad experience with someone they found in my group, not from my preferred vendors list because it didn't exist yet. And they came back to me and said, hey, I found this person in your group and they weren't any good. And I'm like, I don't even know who that person is. So we had to put some parameters around promotion in the group and make sure that we had a system for vetting people. We have a whole application process. We have the whole interview process. Like, it's a thing, you guys, it's a thing. But it also, our preferred vendors know one another and, work together really, really well, which has been a nice thing too. So talking about that, some people wonder, like, should I hire someone who does my bookkeeping, does my taxes, does my strategy stuff? Maybe. There are such things as a full charge bookkeeper, which might have a pretty broad scope of things that they do. But here's what I'm going to tell you to think about with that. It feels more efficient, right? You're like, oh, well, I'll just hand this to one person. But one of the problems of doing that is that if you are handing it all to one person, there's no built-in checks and balances. So some of the things that oftentimes where we find issues is when you have a bookkeeper who's separate from your tax person. Maybe your tax person gets the files and they're like, this doesn't make sense, right? Or maybe your bookkeeper notices something that your tax person did incorrectly. There is a nice check and balance there where you will more likely find issues if you have that issue. Also, I was talking to somebody recently who has had the same tax preparer for 25 years. If you're happy, no need to switch, right? But if you're like, I'm happy, but like, I'm not really sure. Don't switch for saving money. That's not a good reason to switch. But if there's something that doesn't feel aligned with you, it can be a good thing to switch every once in a while for the exact same reasons, right? Because you get fresh eyes and they can be like, oh, there's this tax credit that your old tax preparer wasn't taking for you. Let's go amend the last 3 years and take this thing. There are many different things that can happen when you get fresh eyes on something. You don't want to be moving around because there also can be, a benefit to someone who knows your business. So you don't just want to like accountant hop, right? But if it's been a while since somebody else has looked at it, it might not be a bad time to do it, but don't switch because of money. Right? That's if you're happy with what's going on, don't switch because of money, because I find a lot of people that are like, I was happy and then I switched because it was cheaper and then I didn't get the level of service and I was really unhappy. And I somehow owed taxes and I haven't owed taxes in years. And they're like, what's going on? So that's not a great reason to switch. But if you don't feel aligned with your person, make sure also, I always have to say this, you want to make sure you feel comfortable with them. And the reason I underscore this, of course, it's important for them to be qualified and know what they're doing and and have good communication and be clear on what they're doing, right? Get an agreement for what they're doing. But it's also important that you feel comfortable with that person, because finances, it's like opening up your robe and just being like, hey world, here's, it feels that vulnerable when you're handing over your finances to someone, or you're opening up the curtain and letting somebody in there. You need to feel comfortable with that person, and you need to feel like you can ask the questions that you need to ask. If you are a person that feels like you can't really have a conversation, or you feel like they're going to judge you for the questions that you ask, you are not with the right accountant. The right accountant is someone who will take time to explain things to you, who will not brush it under the rug, who will not give you a partial explanation, who will not make you feel silly for asking the question. They will be somebody who is empathetic, understands what you need, and can help you get there and help you feel comfortable asking whatever questions that you have. So that's kind of one of the litmus tests of if you don't feel comfortable, right? If you don't feel like you can ask that, you feel like you're going to get judged and all that. I mean, there's a little bit of like our own mindset in there too, but also I think if you're with the right person, it'll be a lot easier to ask the questions that you need to ask. And those can get you so much farther. Okay, let's see. Yes. So yes, if you do switch, typically there's going to be some record retention that the CPAs will do, but there are laws around all of that, right? Like disclosure and all that, but you should be able to get back all of your original things. If you gave them, and I don't recommend giving CPAs original anything. Don't hand them your receipts. Okay. Scan them. They don't need your original receipt. They don't need any of your original things. Make sure you have all the originals, because if you get audited, it's going to you. Also, that's an important thing to ask about is when you're interviewing CPAs and things like that, what kind of, do they provide audit support? Is that included in what you're paying, or is that an additional charge, right? Audit support meaning like helping you in case you're ever audited. You want to know that as well. So ask a million questions. Determine how you feel about the person. Does it feel good? Does it feel like a fit? Do you feel comfortable? Do you feel like you could ask them questions? Do you feel like they understand your business? Have they had experience with people with that type of business? Right? Like all of those things, but ask, what do they do? What, exactly. Like, can you write out all the things that you're going to do? Because that's the other thing I see being a really big issue is the misunderstanding and the expectations gap of the person, small business owner, who's like, I think I'm paying for X, Y, Z. and the accountant who's like, I'm being paid for X and Y, not Z. Right? And so that is you need, and that takes asking questions. That takes getting everything written and documented so that you know what that other person is actually going to be doing. And there's no guesswork. And that is 100%. And you don't need it until you need it, right? As we've realized, you don't need a documented agreement for everything that's going on until you need it. And that goes to my accountants who are watching me too. Make sure you're drawing up engagement letters. Do have an engagement letter that says, here are the things that I do, and here's what I charge. And here are the things that are extra. If you want XYZ, here's how much it will cost. Transparency in pricing is key. You need to know that as the business owner, right? And be aware of it and familiar with it. And accountants need to make sure that they're being transparent as well, because that expectations gap is one of the things that can cause friction. There's so many things that cause friction, but pricing and not being aware and getting a bill for, when you thought you were just asking a quick question and all of a sudden they bill you $200 for that question, that's not going to be good for the relationship. And that can be remedied by being upfront and having a contract and being clear on what you get and what you don't. Onboarding and engagement process, all of those things are so, so important. Not just from a legal perspective. Like sometimes we do it just to be like, check the box. We need to have a contract legally in case somebody comes and sues me. That's not what I see an engagement letter really for. That is for expectations to make sure that they are aligned, right? And make sure you read them, business owners. Make sure you read those and you don't just sign them. Read them, understand them, think about them, make sure that they're in line with what you expect and what you need, right? Think about what you could need in the future as well and make sure that it's all in alignment. But you want to make sure, read and understand your engagement letters. Do not just blindly sign them. There's so much information in there. But make sure that you have one. And I would not be suspect of, but if there wasn't a process that accountant had to onboard you, and if it feels really disjointed when they're onboarding you and there's no cohesiveness and no process and no formality to it, that's how the relationship will be going forward, right? There's not going to be process. There's not going to be formality. There's not going to be, not that you necessarily want formality, but again, you want to know like, hey, if I email you, how long is it going to take you to respond to me? What's normal? How much are you going to charge me? Like you want to know all of that. Okay. So that's pretty much, let me check my notes here. Again, fee structures can vary. They can be one time, they can be year round. I prefer the year round. Then you are more likely to have built-in support when you need it if you're paying year round. Let's see. Again, compliance versus advisory, two different things. You need to make sure that what you need is what you're hiring, and you're not assuming that you're getting advisory when you're paying for compliance. Okay. Let's see, should have an engagement letter. And this person should really be an extension of your team. Like that's really, it shouldn't just be somebody, a nameless, faceless person. There are now, there are services now that you can go with that you will never know who's doing your books, right? For bookkeeping, you'll never know who's doing your taxes. They don't know you. They don't know your business. It may be multiple people, right? There's no consistency there. I don't recommend services like that. I think that most business owners need more support than that. And so again, those are, if you're like, those are the price shoppers who are like, I'm going to pay the least amount possible for this. But remember, you get what you pay for in most instances, right? You get what you pay for. What do you really need? What would be super helpful to you? So start there and then go find somebody that offers that and that you feel alignment with. Okay. All right, guys. Well, that is it for today. I will be back on Friday. I've got a stimulus Q&A on Friday at 1:30 Central Time. So make sure to be there. Ask your questions about PPP, all of those things. I'm doing those now every other Friday since things have calmed down. They're not moving as much. So every other Friday, 1:30 p.m. Central Time, I will be back here. And I hope to see you then. Bye, guys.